would happen to your clothing if it was found to have leprosy on it? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Leviticus on walking through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Leviticus 13. We're going to be reading from verses 47 to 52. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Leviticus 13, beginning at verse 47. Also, if a garment has a leprous plague in it, whether it is a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it is in the warp or the woof of linen or wool, whether in leather or in anything made of leather, and if the plague is greenish or reddish in the garment or in the leather, whether in the warp or in the woof, or in anything made of leather, it is a leprous plague, and shall be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine the plague and isolate that which has a plague 7 days, and he shall examine the plague on the 7th day. If the plague has spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, in the leather or anything made of leather, the plague is active leprosy. It shall be unclean. He shall therefore burn that garment in which is the plague, whether warp or woof, in wool or in linen, or in anything of leather, for it is an active leprosy. The garment shall be burned in the fire. In this chapter, we've been dealing with the uncleanness that is caused by leprosy. The leprosy being discussed is not necessarily what we would call leprosy today, but it would certainly include that. What is called leprosy here is most of the time skin blemishes that have either become infected or appear contagious. Someone was going to be declared unclean if they had these, for if one was unclean, one couldn't sacrifice in the tabernacle and thus defile the holy things with what could be contagious disease. This designation was also made so as not to allow the spread of disease throughout the camp, causing an epidemic. The procedure when you had what could be described as a leprous sore was to go to the priest for examination. They were the only ones who could declare someone clean or unclean, so that is why they were chosen. In today's reading, we are discussing what would happen to clothing if it contained the disease of leprosy. Now again, the apparent use here is concerning some type of infectious disease, not necessarily what we would call leprosy today. Can our clothing really transmit diseases? Yes, it can. Underwear contains traces of bodily fluids, which if not clean and worn by another, can spread disease. Towels in our bathroom can do the same, as can sheets on our bed. That's why washing our clothing is important, just as washing our hands is. But at this time, they did not have the laundry detergents, the sanitary conditions that we have, nor access to the tons of hot water that we take so for granted. And so the spread of disease via clothing could be very dangerous. So what would the process be if you found a garment with what could be described as a leprous plague on it? The same process would be followed, as was the case if a person had leprosy. The garment would be taken to the priest for examination. It didn't matter if the garment was wool or linen, the types of clothing worn at that time. It didn't matter if it was in the yarn prepared for the lengthwise part of the garment, known as the warp, or the yarn prepared to go across the garment, known as the woof or the weft. It had to be brought to the priest for examination. It also didn't matter if something was made of leather. Again, it would need to be brought to the priest for examination. How would someone know if their garments were infected? They were to look for the infection being greenish or reddish in the garment. These two colors are often seen with different diseases, although disease could take on a whole host of colors. These were the ones that the Israelites, though, were to look for in this case. What the priest was looking for was very similar to what they were looking for when examining a person, and the process was similar. When they examined the garment, they would first see if it looked like it was infected, and if they determined that it was, they would isolate the garment for 7 days. Bacteria are living organisms, and so, in the right conditions, if alive, they will grow and spread. After 7 days, the garment would be examined again, and if the infection has spread, no matter in what part of the garment the infection is in, then the plague is alive and the garment is declared unclean. There is nothing that will cleanse the garment of its uncleanness. It was to be burned. Why was such drastic measures taken? Because if a disease was active on the garment which is not living, it would also spread unto a person which is living, and make the person unclean as well. It is much preferable to have clothing burned but remain clean yourself than to keep your clothing and later have to be declared unclean. God is a holy God and will only be approached by those who are clean under the law. And so if one wanted to worship God properly in Israel, they would follow these directions. We'll discuss further regulations in this regard, the Lord willing, in the next episode. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Leviticus chapter 13, verses 53 to 59, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.